Hello everybody and welcome to a new video. Today we're going to be taking a look at a watch from a brand called Bettimer, and it is this watch here. Now it doesn't have a model number as such, it is just known as Bettimer. So it's fair to say it's probably the only watch that this brand makes, but have they done a good job with it? Well, we're going to have a look at that in a minute. But before we do that, I do want to tell you, the guys at Bettimer did send me this watch. I don't have to send it back, but I do want to be very clear that the views that I have in this video are my own. I haven't been paid in any way, shape or form to say what I'm about to say. Now, for those of you who watched the channel before, you know that I'm not really a dress watch kind of person. I like sports models, that's my sort of thing, and that's why you predominantly see sports type watches on the channel. So I apologise you don't get to see too many dress watches, but for me the Bettimer stood out because it does actually sit in that sweet spot between looking quite good in a casual environment and certainly appropriate for a more business or formal like situation. In terms of the specifications for the watch, you do have a sapphire crystal anti-reflective coating, you've got a PT 5000 movement inside. It's not an NH35, guys. So PT 5000 is a Chinese movement. It is based on the Etter or Solita Swiss movement, and by all accounts is quite accurate and has a fairly good service life attached to it. But it is different to the NH35, only in so much as the NH35 has, I think, about 21,600 BPH, whereas the PT 5000 goes at 28,800, I think, there or thereabouts. Who's counting? But like I say, the intent is that the second hand would have a smoother sweep on it. But like I say, really nice watch for the price point. So there's a bit of a spoiler for you. But like I say, let's turn the camera around. We'll take a look at the watch in further detail. I'll tell you the specs again, and we can look at it in further detail. But as per usual though, if you do have any comments, questions, that sort of stuff, put them in the comment section and I will come back to you when I can. Other than that, let's take a look at the watch in further detail. So here is the watch that the Bettimer is a homage to, and that is the Girard Perragaux Laureato, which is a $14,000 watch, so not an insubstantial amount of money to be invested. On the other hand, the Bettimer is much more reasonably priced at around about 380 Australian dollars, or just under 250 US dollars. So we'll kick the review off with the Lume first of all, and I can tell you the Lume is really good on this watch. It's obviously not diver sort of standard, but it is a strong BGW9 Lume. It's got a nice blue hue to it, and it's one of those that sort of blazes very bright and then settles down to something that's really quite strong, but doesn't tend to fade for quite some time. Now the video does have a couple of minutes of Lume here, but trust me when I say it will see you right all the way through to the wee hours. Overall, again, I'm not trying to compare this to a diver because that would be unfair, but for a dress watch, I think the Lume's fantastic, and I've given it a score of 8 out of 10 based on that. Next up we have the case and the overall finishing of the case. Now I'm a big fan of this watch. As I said in the intro, I like watches that are sports orientated. I'm not so much a dress kind of watch person, but this does sit nicely and straddles both of those applications quite well. As you can see, case finishing is quite complex. You do have a brushed top. You've got some polished accents on that bezel on the sides, and you also have some beveling, polished beveling that on the case as well. But overall, really nice finishing. I didn't find any sharp edges or anything like that, and the overall finishing was really quite good. Like I say, you can see there that smooth sort of polished finish on that edge of the case, which obviously is a nice bit of attention to detail. You do have a screw down case back, and like I say, later on in the video I'll be able to show you that PT 5000 movement in there. But overall, really nice finishing on that watch. The only concern I would have is that the brushed top on that bezel and on the sides of the case could potentially get scuffed up. Overall though, case finishing pretty good, and I'm going to give that an 8 out of 10. So moving on to the dial and the crystal, let's cover the crystal first of all. So sapphire crystal, anti-reflective coating, it does its job quite adequately. You are going to get a little bit of gleam in sunlight, but for all intents and purposes, and I hope the footage shows this, the dial the crystal does actually just fade away. In terms of finishing on that dial, I think the dial etching is absolutely fantastic. So you've got that pyramid style etched effect. Printing, very good, and hopefully you can see there that footage there where it says automatic. This is super macro, very, very clean, crisp printing on the dial there, and that etched window. Again, sometimes quite sloppy on some watches, but looked pretty strong from the macro footage that I had. And you do have those applied markers as well, which look very, very tidy, especially at this price point. The date window there, I know it looks a little bit blurred, the 14, but it isn't. It's just because the focus is on the actual window rather than the date there. But again, hopefully that footage gives you a bit of I suppose a viewpoint on what it looks like in very close-up conditions. The dial hands, I couldn't really see any rough finishing too much, and again this super macro footage shows that it is well executed, which is another good sign that it is a slightly higher than what would be expected at a watch at this particular price point. Again, there you've got the hour indices, very nicely finished, and the lume is applied well in the baton, so you don't have any sort of overflow or anything like that. So very well finished. Overall, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Okay, so moving on to the bracelet, you do have an integrated bracelet which has a certain level of complexity to it, in so much as you've got that polished finish on the inner links, and then the outer links, that nice brushed finish. I didn't find any rough edges or anything like that, even when I was sort of trying to figure out in between those bracelets. They were nicely beveled on the sides, and finishing I thought was really quite good. You do have the same style bracelet as the Girard Perragaux, albeit with the Bettimer logo here, and it's a push clasp affair, but very nice overall. You do have screwed links, so it is very easy to adjust, but there isn't a micro adjustment, and truth be told, the bracelet sits a little bit loose on my wrist, which is normally around about 7¼ inches. Again, that's a minor complaint because that's just my wrist size. For most people it will fit very well, and it does fit me well. It's just a little looser than I would typically wear it. But again, if I took one more link out, I think it was probably going to be a little bit too tight. You can see there the finishing on the sides and those screwed links, very smooth, and certainly a level above what you would typically find from an AliExpress watch. But again, at this particular price point, that's probably to be expected. Here's some footage of it on the wrist. You can see there it sort of slips down towards my hand because it is a little bit loose, but it does fit really well. It isn't a hair catcher in any way, shape or form. The only complaint I have is that it does have a little bit of a squeak when I rattle my wrist, which is not very often, to be totally honest, and not particularly noticeable, but it would be remiss of me not to mention it. I'm trying to figure out where that rattle is. Overall though, 7 out of 10, only because of that rattle, but it's a very good bracelet overall. Inside the watch you do have the PT5000, which is a high beat clone of the ETA 2824, which is much the same as the Sleater SW200, which is also a clone of the ETA 2824, but you do have that high beat at 28,800 BPH, and it's a 25 jaw movement. By all accounts, I couldn't find anything in this macro footage that would lead me to be concerned about its longevity or its accuracy, and quite frankly, while I had it on the wrist for about 4 or 5 days, it did sit at around about 20 to 30 seconds out during that time. Bearing in mind the watch hadn't been worn in at all, I think that's quite good, and it's probably going to settle down somewhat more. The only concern, or I suppose negative that I can really find, and it's not necessarily with the movement, but it's just the plastic spacer in there. It would have been nice to have seen a metal spacer to hold that movement in place. But overall, very nice movement. And bearing in mind the PT5000 is a much higher class of movement than the NH35, it was nice to see Bettimer include this in the watch. Overall, I'm going to score the movement at 7.5 out of 10, only because of that plastic spacer ring as opposed to a metal one. Okay guys, so my closing thoughts on this watch. Well, it's the only watch that this brand makes, so it'll be interesting to see what they do outside of this particular model. But at the price point that it sits at, which currently based on the pricing on AliExpress is around about $380, I think it's a solid entry. As I said a couple of times in this video, it does sit between what is a sports watch and a dress watch. So if you are a sort of a person that wants a watch that fulfills all of those requirements, then this is certainly something to look at. Again, it has that PT5000, which is a nice high beat movement, and the overall finishing of the watch was absolutely outstanding. The lume is good, it doesn't pull hairs, it's a very nice watch overall. Again, there's that little squeak on the wrist in the bracelet, which I'm sure over time will disappear, but yeah, very good watch. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do have any questions, by all means please do put it in the comment section. Other than that, I will see you in a new video very soon. Take care guys, cheers.